Some of you are still here. I'm amazed. First, I'd like to start by thanking Veronique and Catherine and her team for putting this on. On behalf of the speakers and as a member of the audience today, this was first class. You did a great job. I stand here today at a real crossroads in my life and my career. I started in academia, in academic leadership, about 25 years ago, 30 years ago. The University of Texas at Austin, I co-founded the design program there. It's a big research university. I went and I led Parsons School of Design in Manhattan. And now I'm a provost at Philadelphia University. And for those of you who don't know what a provost is, in the United States, I had a parent tell me the other day that it sounded like a swift mammal. But a provost runs the academic side of the university, and the president runs the executive side of the university at many universities in the United States. But right now I'm switching, I'm moving into the private sector. And so this is a real moment, a poignant moment of reflection for me to look back at that 25, 30 years, to look at where academia and universities are right now, and to think a little bit about leadership. My background is in design. I came from design into academic leadership, and that's how I view what I've done and where I'm going. So, there's a lot of talk about how universities are medieval in origin. What I'm going to talk about today is try to frame what a university is. So we don't just assume an image of a university as some sort of normative legacy thing. We've constructed universities, and we need to rethink what they are fundamentally. Yes, they're medieval in origin, but the roots of the modern university grow out of the Industrial Revolution. And in fact, during a 50-year period, most of what we understand today as university-ness came into being. Let's think about some of what happened during that period and how it's now been integrated into the frame of the university. Standardized grading. Standardized testing. Multiple choice tests. Come on, I got it. Knowledge compartmentalization in the form of disciplines and departments and so on and so forth. Professional disciplines such as law and medicine and business. Credits. All throughout the world, there's different credit systems. In the United States, it's the Carnegie Unit. Standardized curricula. Sequential standardized curricula. All of that and much more constitutes university-ness to us. And they were remarkably powerful tools for progress during the industrial age, the late industrial age. But for a different society facing different problems that presented themselves at entirely different scales and were connected to vastly different social and economic structures. And today, I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you how the world has changed. We've heard about that today. But we see the accelerating mobility of people and political ideology and goods and ideas, and my God, capital. You're surfing down capital now all over the world, completely fluid. And we have a situation now where we have these discipline-defined, massively networked, global systems producing new classes of problems. And again, we've heard about this today. Global systems with staggering complexity. They produce these confounding, ambiguous problems. And that's almost a cliche to go through these now, but systemic economic fragility in 2008 the whole world basically melted down because of the mortgage problem in the United States. And now we have the Greek economy kind of threatening to ripple through the European Union and perhaps through the rest of the world. These issues are now so systemic that we need to learn how to deal with them in new ways. Global climate change is another great example. But again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. So in response to this new world, a lot of questions are being raised about the value of the traditional university, and frankly, they should be raised. The 20th century university model is unbundling before our eyes right now. And as I said, it should unbundle. We have not progressed in this way that we should over the last 20 or 30 years. Now, if you think about that grid as the coherent 20th century industrial model of the university, as the cohesion weakens that brought that model together, and the value propositions which gave it that coherence, we see the emergence of what I will call fragments. So we have the weakening cohesion, and now we can see under the fog of that vision of the normative university, the pieces of the university as fragments. And let's identify those fragments. These are very small, so I'll read them out for you. Unbundling of the instructor's role. We have so much discussion today about the new role of the professor, no longer the sage on the stage, a mentor, a co-creator, and so on. We have the unbundling of disciplinary cohesion. I am tired of disciplines. And I can say this stuff now that I'm leaving, right? I'm just tired of them. The reason I like them as an administrator is because they're easy to budget. But that's about it. But disciplinary cohesion is being called into question. How many times did you hear transdisciplinary today? The term transdisciplinarity. Unbundling of the monolithic credential. A BA, an MA, a doctoral degree, what do they really mean today? They're being called into question. No longer can you look at a degree like that, a normative thing, and if you're a company or you're a graduate, you're running a graduate program, you can't assume that degree has inherent value in it the way that you might have 30 or 40 years ago. And so now there's challenges to the traditional degree in the form of what you might call stackable credentials that you earn as badges as you move through your curriculum. Those credentials then are put onto your transcript and tell a story about where you've been. That's the future. The future is not about these monolithic degrees anymore. Unbundling of the financial model. In the United States, schools like ours are tuition-driven. There'll be many mergers, many bankruptcies. It's already happening everywhere. I can tell you at our school, we are approached every month, silently and secretly, from other universities wanting to merge with us because of the financial pressures. In Europe and elsewhere, this is happening mostly in the form of mergers. And then unbundling of the traditional package of pedagogies. We hear a lot about flipped classrooms and new form studio-based science and so on and so forth. And then unbundling of the boundaries around student experience. No longer is the student experience contained within the boundaries of the university itself. So we don't know exactly what the model of the future university will be, but we can begin to take some educated guesses. The emerging model is what I'll think of as what we can think of as an unbundled university. It embraces the complexity and the systemic nature of the problems that I've discussed by organizing itself around problem-based transdisciplinary teaching and learning, explicitly building curricula around collaborative learning experience and positioning itself as a hub in a network of knowledge sources. The unbundled university leverages the fact that knowledge is a commodity, that content delivery is no longer its major role, and the value it adds is about teaching students to critically evaluate information, synthesize it into knowledge, and apply it to specific contexts that are often complex and ambiguous. Daphne Kohler, who founded and runs Coursera, was at a conference at the University of Pennsylvania on MOOCs. And she was talking about MOOCs, and the audience was full of provosts and academic presidents. And someone raised their hand and said, should we be afraid of MOOCs? And Daphne Kohler, with just absolutely a straight face, said, the only institutions that should be afraid of MOOCs are those specializing in content delivery. And I'll tell you, it sent a shiver through the room. So, I'm here because I'm a provost of Philadelphia University. That's my office building. And Philadelphia University, for a variety of reasons, is a place that was ready to change. And I'm not going to go into why or how, but for historical reasons, it was positioned at a particular moment 6, 7 years ago where a bunch of leadership could kind of swoop in and work with the community there and do things that I don't think we could have done anywhere else. It was a university that was, as I forgot the writer's name, The Innovative University, the book. It was suffering from what most colleges and universities in the United States are suffering from, that is what was termed Harvard envy. Sorry if I was. And that is this kind of normative notion of what a university is. So we're going to have like a prestigious looking lawn, and we're going to have a fountain, and we have to have these benches. Students are going to sit around and they're going to read on the grass, and everything is going to be great, and we're going to just kind of have these disciplines, and students are going to come, and it's going to be prestigious and great. But the environment that Philadelphia University was in was fundamentally changing. And as we saw, the problems that its graduates needed to address were fundamentally different. And thank God the financial crisis hit just at the right time that we could kind of roll the dice, if you will. We could say we're entering this turbulent period and we don't have a huge endowment. We need to radically differentiate. And we knew from lots of research that we had done in talking with graduate programs and employers and other universities and students and faculty that a whole new kind of education was necessary for our graduates in order to address the problems when they graduated. So we have a dynamic, turbulent environment, and we have, yes, there we go, got it. So what we wanted to do was to redesign the university structure to encourage flexibility and adaptability. There are 3 kinds of universities in the United States right now. Those that are elitely endowed, those that are at risk, and those that are flexible and nimble. And we are not elitely endowed. And then build innovation into the shared governance system. The shared governance system is the constitution which arranges the relationships between the faculty and the administration. So we wanted to redesign the entire university around new concepts of teaching and learning and new skills for graduates. Now, I'm just going to go through a few things that we learned here. And I can't go into great detail about every aspect of this, but suffice it to say that this was pretty radically student-centered. User-centered. We were talking to students and we were talking to faculty. We were also constantly consulting with other universities, user groups constantly in order to develop our plan. But lesson 1 is that I learned was build infusions of knowledge into the system that you're trying to change. So the unbundled university that's emerging now and the model that we're moving toward is constantly asking questions about how it adds value. It doesn't assume it's adding value. It asks questions about how it can add value and what kind of value it adds. It does this by reimagining and redesigning the system itself in which value is created. So you have to reframe fundamentally what the university is. Oh, there's Banny. So homage to Banny. We had Banny in, and we had many workshops over the first 2 years I was there, bringing in infusions of knowledge from the outside. the Provost's office created something called the Transformation Imperative. And that was had two meanings. One, we needed to change internally, and second, higher education as a system needed to change. And so we brought in experts from all over the world to do workshops, to lecture, to work with our faculty and students on all these different facets of change. How we can think about new technological infrastructures, how we can think about new spaces and new kinds of teaching, new kinds of credentials. And we've institutionalized that now so it occurs constantly, all the time, every year. That outside knowledge is expected now by our faculty and students. It's always part of their experience of working, if you're a faculty member, at the university. Because institutional knowledge is insufficient when you're in a situation like we're in right now with higher education. You can't expect to change the system if you're just looking to it on the inside. You need that outside infusion of knowledge. Find thought leaders. So the sector can't provide all the solutions or even identify all of the opportunities. Lesson 2. And you've heard this all day today. I was really happy to see all the different ways people talked about prototyping. Constantly identify prototyping opportunities. And don't assume that you have to create prototypes. They're kind of all over the place, I think. You just have to identify. A prototype is anything that works as a prototype, right? So an org chart, I'll talk about in a minute. An org chart can be an amazing prototype if you use it right. Build to think rather than discuss, analyze, or hypothesize in abstract terms before acting, because you have to build in a situation like us. You have to design and concretize ideas and have people respond to them, because again, you can't look to the inside necessarily for ideas. You need to concretize things and respond to them. It's a totally different way of thinking. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Philadelphia University. So we did a strategic planning process, and guess what? Everybody said, you know what? We should be innovative. What the hell does innovation mean? I mean, you know, it means nothing at this point, right? It means everything and nothing. And so, you know, how do you take an idea like innovation and make it real? So when the community came to us, the president and I, and said, we want to be innovative, we're like, great, let's achieve innovation by building something together. And we decided we would create something called the College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce. And I can't remember why we didn't say Design, Engineering, and Business. They didn't like the acronym DEB or something. But Design, Engineering, and Commerce would bring 16 majors together and encompass over half of this population in our university. So we had this tacit idea of being innovative, and we tried to make it concrete by creating something together, the College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce. And as we were making the college, we were having charrettes, we were prototyping pedagogies, we were prototyping spaces, we were prototyping new ways of faculty working together. We were constantly prototyping, and as we were moving through this process, we were using action research, which is a form of research that goes out into the community that's being affected, essentially, and you're consulting with them, you're learning from them as they're responding to the change. And these bars, I mean, this is one instrument that we use. Sitting down and having coffee with people works too, let me tell you. Or you could also do ethnographic research. But this particular instrument, you see these bars, and these bars are measuring across a number of variables different perceptions of change. For example, is it 1 minute? 5 minutes? Okay. Okay. And so we created this, based on that original research, we learned that the building, we understood that people were ahead of us. We thought we were ahead of them. And that we needed somehow to bring them together around this concrete idea of the college. And so we decided to accelerate the building of a building by a year and a half because it was a prototype that we could use to bring the community together. We couldn't build a building unless we knew how to create the curriculum. We couldn't create the curriculum, really, also without the building because the two things work together. And I can tell you, building that building a year and a half early was the best thing that we ever did. Lesson 4, use co-creation. We've heard that today too, to foster cultures of change. I'm not going to go too deeply into the academic growth plan, but it was a way of bringing the entire university together each year, and we still do it, to look at our entire academic program, how the individual programs fit together, how they complement each other, how they don't, where are the programs weak, where are they strong, and we look at everything together, and we develop new programming based on that co-creative work we do each year. And then create prototyping chains. And I just want to quickly mention that, so we created the College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce, but that just became a prototype. So the college became a prototype for the entire university. We said, well, that worked pretty well, so let's create two more colleges that all are matrixed and work together. And so we essentially created an entire new university based on the prototype of the College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce. And now the entire university itself, again, matrixed together, is a kind of change machine, all based on design thinking and all driving design thinking. And I'm not going to go into great detail here, but essentially what happens, move forward here. Lesson 4, decide what matters most and build it into the system. Collaboration and teamwork are tremendously important. We wanted to design that into the very essence of who we were. Normally, you start at the freshman year as students are entering the system, and they're broad. As they begin to graduate, as they get to graduation, their academic experience narrows and they specialize. And then typically they'll graduate, and then typically they create these traditional collaborative courses that happen during the junior and the senior year. But what happens? You have these gaps that form. And the gaps are tremendous problems. There are cultural issues that get started between the disciplines during those gap years. Students don't know how to work together. So we built into the system collaboration and teamwork from the moment the student enters the university. And I'm not going to go into great detail here with this diagram, but what this diagram is essentially saying is, by using prototyping chains, we applied one lesson to another lesson, and we essentially built a system that is self-reinforcing at this point. And the system now, it's really interesting. We hit a tipping point, I think, about last year. The system now produces really interesting academic programming on its own. I don't really have to do anything as provost anymore. The faculty runs the system, and the system is designed in such a way that it kind of generates its own change and has generated its own logic. And so I guess my message to you is that change can occur, even in something as path-dependent as a university. It can occur, and it must occur. So what's next for us? Well, we've been very internally focused. And I think what's next for us is to take what we have learned from creating the university from the inside and use it to build partnerships within a distributed network, a new kind of network of innovation-driven universities around the world. In fact, a network very much like the one Veronique and the Paris d.school is involved in creating now. Again, thank you very much.